So for further analysis on the matter, Mohamed Ezz El-Din, Al-Ahram managing editor from Cairo, is joining us. Welcome to Qnews, sir. How does the repeated use of lethal force against civilians seeking aid affect the accountability of military operations under international humanitarian law, please?
Thank you so much for having me on Qnews. Certainly, there's the humanitarian aid distribution process is completely flawed. In addition to the chaos taking place with the very limited humanitarian aid distribution, today only one box was dedicated to each Palestinian family, and each Palestinian family has a lot of members. And today there was a halt on the distribution, and it was reopened in the morning in one center in central Gaza, and we have seen a lot of martyrs falling in the first and second days of Eid. More than 100 killed and 550 injured. There is a great inefficiency in the aid distribution process on the starved Palestinians. In addition to the insufficiency, they are using maps to displace and evacuate the populations towards certain paths, in addition to shooting them and opening fire, as what happened this morning after the occupation forces said that the road should have been secure. They opened fire. This inefficiency, in addition to the political use of the distribution points to serve the redeployment plans of the occupation forces, is completely in violation to the international law. In addition to targeting the hundreds of the Palestinians seeking aid, this must stop. And
Mr. Ezz El-Din, what, in your opinion, do you think maybe? Let's move on to the next question, Mr. Ezz El-Din, if I may. What are the, in your opinion, do you think are the structural or the logistical failures within the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and aid distribution systems that have contributed to the deadly incidents and aid delays, do you think?
First, the number of distribution points is not enough. Second, the geographic distribution of such points is not based on any population density basis. Third, they are using the distribution points as indicators to detect the citizens and allege that they are a threat to the forces. And fourth, they open fire on women and children and civilians seeking humanitarian aid. And finally, the inefficiency and the chaos happening. All of these reasons caused the continuation of the Palestinian suffering and the insufficiency and the systematic targeting of civilians is also ongoing. This requires adjusting the map and leveraging the expertise of the international organizations actually concerned with aid distributions, and not using these aid points to circulate red papers.
How do you think, sir, do the fuel restrictions and the attacks on the aid seekers reflect maybe broader strategies of siege warfare?
Certainly, these increase the tragedy, and as the catastrophe worsens, not only the fuel crisis, but also all of the medical supplies The fuel has only 2 days to run out from the entire Gaza Strip. The occupation forces is halting any entry of fuels or any fuel to run generators. Also, the very long walk distances for entire families to only obtain one box of humanitarian aid, in addition to the threat to their lives because of the random shooting on the civilians taking aid. Of course, all of this worsens the humanitarian tragic situation the Palestinian people is going through. In addition to the chaos and the halt and reopening and the complete control of the occupation forces on the distribution points described by the Palestinians as US points managed by armed soldiers, which is also a violation to international treaties which impose a certain form of international staff, especially concerned with humanitarian relief.
How do you think, sir, does the collapse of the healthcare infrastructure in Gaza influence the overall humanitarian crisis?
Of course, the impact is worsening day by day with the fuel almost running out from hospitals and medical centers. There is also the problem of the supplies shortages and the red papers or the evacuation orders that prevent the injured from heading to hospitals, and therefore the death toll increases. There are always injuries that can actually be treated, but the occupation forces would not allow the injured to head to any hospitals, in addition to actually opening fire on ambulances and medical centers. Therefore, there is a difficulty to take the injured by carriages, in addition to carrying them for very long distances. This is completely inhumane, and it contributes to increasing the death toll from the Palestinian people and the Gaza Strip in particular.
And in your opinion, sir, how do you think might the continued violence against the civilians gathering for aid impact a ceasefire agreement?
Of course, it's a real tragedy, and the occupation forces and the Israeli government are very insistent on this very inhumane shape of aid distribution. First, they work on displacing and evacuating the Palestinians from their places and partitioning the Gaza Strip to impose a military rule. Also, the shortage of aid points and hiring suspicious staff with military backgrounds who open actual fire on the aid seeking civilians. There is also the non-professionality and the limited volume of humanitarian aid compared to the volume of need. Also, the families are not able to reach the distribution points, especially today after the reopening. They only opened one aid point. They were talking about 8, but today we have only seen the point in central Gaza being opened with the death of 5 Palestinians, including 2 children and 1 woman. This requires some international pressure, whether by the United Nations and other international organizations or the peace-seeking countries. We can say that Egypt is working tirelessly with exerting a lot of effort to guarantee and ensure the humanitarian aid access and getting it to Palestinians, in addition to the endeavors with Qatar and the mediators and the talks to reach a ceasefire and stopping the targeting of civilians in Gaza.